Warning, spoilers for the first episode of Black Mirror Season 5 follow. As a young kid struggling with learning that she was trans, I spent a lot of time fantasizing that I would magically change to the other gender. My daydreams included meeting a genie who would fulfill my wish, or that a sudden toxic spill would occur as I walked across the street, washing over me and suddenly transforming me into my ideal body. Basically, I wanted to be the transgender Daredevil. And while this wish never got magically fulfilled, one way I got to live out these fantasies was through video games. As I started to learn more about who I was on the inside, I started to play as a girl in most games, becoming a feminine version of myself in a world that wouldn't judge me for doing so, and would treat me just like the person that I wanted to be. Games became not only an escape, but an exploration of who I was, and looking back, became a better representation of the real me in certain ways than the person in the real world. So sitting down to watch the latest round of Netflix's Black Mirror, I was shocked when the first episode of the season provided a surprisingly similar and thoughtful discussion of my childhood experience. Striking Vipers showcases one of the most compelling portrayals of the interaction between gaming, gender, and sexuality ever put to screen, as well as how gaming has started to shape how we explore our identities. It's time to nerd out. Striking Vipers follows longtime friends Danny and Carl reconnecting by playing the latest installment of their favorite video game fighting series, Striking Vipers. However, in typical Black Mirror fashion, this latest incarnation of the series features a VR component that puts the players inside the body of their chosen fighter, including simulating all physical sensations. Danny chooses to play as the ripped, shirtless male Lance character, while Carl picks to play the scantily clad female Roxette. However, their fighting quickly devolves into kissing and, after an initial reluctance to explore their feelings, sex within the video game world. The rest of the episode follows the two as they wrestle with what the implications of their mutual attraction and sexual encounters are for their sexuality. Carl even offhandedly remarks,
"Guess that's us gay now."
This remarkable setup gives the episode huge license to explore the complicated connections that occur between gaming and the formation of identity, specifically through gender and sexuality. As the gaming industry has grown and become more immersive, so too has a game's ability to allow people to find new ways to explore themselves. Video games have always had an element of wish fulfillment baked into the very nature of the medium. Many games provide players a chance to live a life that is different from their own. Want to be a space marine? We got ya. How about an ancient wizard? That too. Or maybe a hyper-masculine Greek god. Yeah, definitely have that one in spades. Video games allow you to jump into all these identities and more. Yet gaming isn't just about putting on a digital costume, but actually places you into these different characters. In an interview, Video Games Have Always Been Queer author Bonnie Ruberg stated,
"Video games can be a way to try out different identities, to explore your own identity, to have a space where you can play with identity. And one of the things that's unique about video games is they're not just what you see on the surface. They're not just the images that you see on the screen. They're about the interactions and the experiences you have."
When you turn on a game, you get to live the life of someone else. The experiences that you have as that character are all colored by the fact that you are someone different from yourself. For example, when you play the latest God of War, you're not a 21st century human walking around ancient Nordic mythology. You become a haunted former god who's trying to learn what it means to be a good father. The narrative allows you to explore what it means to be a parent. And everything in the game, from the story to the gameplay, is meant to reinforce, reflect, and explore that specific part of Kratos' identity. However, the game's themes don't need to be tied to who you are to let this change in identity occur. Even in games like Half-Life 2, where the creators specifically designed the character of Gordon Freeman to be silent, so players could place their own personality onto him, you're still being treated by the characters within the world as a highly educated male character.
Gordon Freeman. Let me get a look at you, man. My God, you haven't changed one iota. How do you do it?
You're referred to by male pronouns.
Wake up, Mr. Freeman.
You're allowed to participate in experiments because of your education, and you start to develop a relationship with the character of Alex. Now, how you view your relationship with Alex as platonic or romantic may be influenced by the player's actual real-life sexuality or gender, but that still feeds through the filter of a male character. Maybe someone like a lesbian would be more apt to see a relationship with Alex as romantic if Gordon Freeman were a female, for example. Experiences like this allow us to see the world in someone else's shoes. We get to sympathize with another point of view. The game Gone Home explores the story of a young girl in the 1990s learning that she's a lesbian and experiencing her first relationship, and also dealing with stuff like Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and dealing with parents' non-acceptance.
And so here's the thing. I was prepared for them to be mad or disappointed or start crying or something, but they were just in denial. You're too young to know what you want. You and Lonnie are just good friends. You just haven't met the right boy. It's a phase. That's what I didn't see coming.
Many non-gay gamers came away from that gaming experience with a newfound understanding of what it means to come out at a young age. Gaming can build new avenues of sympathy and empathy. Yet, the Black Mirror episode goes deeper than this, and actually starts to discuss how gaming and trying on new identities allows you to learn more about yourself. As the study The Impact of Video Games on Identity Construction by Charlie Eckenbarger puts it, quote, "Video games have advanced to the point of realism where players may also identify with characters in a way that explores parts of themselves they may not have known before. The virtual spaces that individuals participate in is a safe space for identity exploration and construction due to the anonymity and safety of the virtual environment provided. Video games are a safe space for one to play around with their new in-game identity, and as a result, allow you to discover aspects of yourself that you wouldn't have known otherwise. In Striking Vipers, Carl and Danny would never have explored their attraction to each other in the real world. For Carl and Danny to do so would mean they had to overcome internalized issues and external societal forces like homophobia, physical attraction, marriage, and others. Yet when they enter the game, they're seemingly released from the inhibitions and pressure of the real world, and can actually explore their feelings for each other in a safe way. This permission to explore is an actual phenomenon. Going back to the God of War example, the game's producer Cory Balrog has received numerous stories about players learning to be better fathers, or reconnecting with their parents because it allowed them to place themselves into the fatherhood experience of Kratos.
This guy came up to me and was like, "Hey, you made God of War, right?" He's like, "I'm sorry, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I just have to say, I've been estranged from my father for like 20 years. Haven't talked to him, right? And this game made me understand a little bit about what he might have been going through. It made me want to call him, right? And I was like, wow. I'm like, "So you did?" "Yeah." He's like, "I called him." I'm like, "Do you still talk to him?" He's like, "We talk every week."
Wow.
Right?
Yet gaming also holds a special place for the queer community. LGBTQ people are often at risk if they express their sexuality or gender identity in the real world, especially at a young age. Yet it's sometimes hard to understand confusing feelings without having access to being able to explore them or express them, and gaming sometimes provides a safe avenue to do so. Transgender people, for example, often feel like they can explore versions of their gender that they would typically be punished for in the real world. Transgender gamer Bringmore, in an interview with the podcast Imaginary Worlds, had this to say.
Dragon Age was one of the major games for me. It gave me that opportunity to explore the kind of decisions that I could make, not only as a person, but in terms of, here is the person I'm presenting as, whether it's a gender identity or it's Dragon Age, so it's fantasy. So any of the races or appearances, all of that was up to me, and it was freeing in a way I don't think I would have originally anticipated. Because suddenly it was, on this day I'm feeling like this, so I can be this person, or I'm feeling, more feminine on this day, so I can, kind of present it as a more fantasy version of myself. It was my first taste of freedom, essentially.
In the real world, however, many transgender people would face prejudice or violence if they attempted to explore playing with their gender by doing these things like wearing dresses, makeup, or being a tomboy. One need only look at the growing epidemic of trans women of color being murdered to at least see a sign of that. Games, then, can become safe spaces to explore being another gender without risk of mental or physical harm. Also, if you have time, check out the full Imaginary Worlds episode. It's great and goes into greater depth on the full extent of the trans experience in gaming, and the link is below. This exploration of identity is even more potent when the player gets to choose who their character is within a narrative, rather than filling the shoes of a predetermined identity. In Mass Effect, characters can decide if they want to be a man or a woman, but the narrative doesn't drastically change as a result. The only major changes are pronoun usage, as well as which characters you can romance due to those characters' own specific sexualities. This means that transgender and queer players can have a sense of agency within their identity. They get to choose who they want to be, and the world doesn't judge them for that. This stands in direct contrast to how, in the real world, trans people are presumed to be their birth gender, or gay people are often assumed to be straight. Instead of others putting an identity onto them, they get to define their own identity. We see this reflected in Black Mirror, when Danny and Carl decide their avatars. Danny always chooses to be a guy, while Carl chooses to be a girl, even when they both know that the option to choose otherwise is available to them. So when they have sex, they're still fulfilling the societal norms of a straight relationship, and that allows them to express themselves in another way. While they question if they're gay, they both seem to, at least initially, reject this reading of themselves.
Guess that's us gay now.
Don't feel like a gay thing.
By choosing their avatars, they still have agency in expressing their sexuality in a way that feels comfortable to them. However, games are also distinct other realities, not one's actual life. Carl and Danny begin to wonder what their virtual experience means for their real-world selves. Danny feels sexually energized, but also begins to disengage from his wife and family.
I'm sorry, baby. I'm just tired, okay?
He also starts to believe he's cheating on his wife. This mirrors how in our world, we had to create new social rules and contexts when it comes to cheating or other issues within the digital age. For example, does sexting someone besides your monogamous partner constitute as cheating? Many believe it does, but that's a societal norm that didn't exist even 20 years ago. Danny is still trying to figure out what his virtual actions means for his real world. Carl, on the other hand, feels a lot less guilt about the experience. He constantly pushes Danny to continue exploring their relationship, even after Danny tries to break it off.
I gotta think of Theo. Okay, but we don't have to completely cut it off. What about, like, the first Sunday of each month? No. Just now and then. Carl, it has to stop. A clean break. Come on, this is good. This is good. You know it is.
However, the two also try to understand the limits of what their virtual experiences can bring to the real world. In the end, Carl and Danny decide to kiss in reality, and find that they don't have the same connection that they do in the game. Yet both Carl and Danny react to this revelation differently.
You know it's different in the game, man. No! You gotta get that shit out of your head. It ain't coming out, man. No! It's burrow right in there. No, fuck! Burrow right in there, man. I know it. Hey, you know it. Hey!
Danny pushes back on the idea that it means anything, whereas Carl still feels like their experience has become a part of their identity. These two represent extreme reactions at a discovery like this. One can reject a part of themselves, pushing it down in order to move through life easier. This reflects how some queer folks remain closeted in order to try to live a normal life. Yet to go to the other extreme like Carl might be too far as well. Carl has become lost in the fantasy, without any care towards the ramifications of his choices on others like Danny and his wife. He wants to live in that perfect world, rather than exist in the real one. While certainly I'm not advocating that anyone reject their identity or hide it because they think it would hurt someone else's feelings, coming out or revealing who you are carries ramifications, especially when it comes to relationships. Sometimes a trans or queer person would face disownment from their family or other difficulties figuring out. So Carl shouldn't force Danny to feel the same way about his experience as Carl does. Everyone has to come to their own understandings of who you are, and how you express or explore your identity in the world is up to you. Yet the end of the episode gives hints that there is a middle ground. It's revealed that once a year, Carl and Danny decide to have a sexual encounter in Striking Vipers, while Danny's wife gets to have her own sexual experience separate from Danny. All parties involved seem to have consented to this arrangement, showing that you can build a life that rejects the norms that society has built and create new ones, which is a recurring theme in all of Black Mirror. How technology changes how we interact with each other. It's also worth noting that as the episode features a predominantly Black and Asian cast, Striking Vipers also touches upon how race interacts with issues of gender and sexuality, including how minorities face greater pressures to hide any perceived threat to their masculinity. However, as there have been many wonderful pieces written by people of color on this issue, I'll direct you to those articles in the links below to get a broader sense of the implications of race within Striking Vipers' narrative. In the end, Black Mirror shows us that technology, and specifically gaming, is having a growing influence on how we discover and construct our own identities. With emerging technologies like VR making realities other than our own more immersive, the concept of who we are will continue to expand. Yet, unlike the majority of Black Mirror episodes, Striking Vipers looks at this change with hope and optimism. Gaming can help liberate us from our boxes that we have put ourselves in, and to let us find our true selves by pretending to be someone else. That's it for Nerd Out, but if you want more episodes like this, or other analysis of geek or queer topics, give my channel a subscribe. And if you want to help make these videos even better, consider giving to my Patreon page. Every little bit helps, and I'm honestly going through a bit of a financial crisis at the moment, so anything that you can give if you're able would mean the world. But regardless, either way, until next time, live long and prosper.